The Galactic Council hall was quiet. Rows of glowing alien beings sat in floating seats, their eyes shining in different colors. They had gathered to talk about one small world called Earth. Most of them thought humans were weak, noisy, and emotional. No one in that room believed humans could be a danger. At the center of the hall stood Commander Elias Ward, the only human there. He wore a simple uniform, no weapon, no armor, only calm eyes that watched everyone. Around him stood beings from hundreds of worlds, taller, stranger, older. The council leader, Verex of the Crystal Race, spoke with a deep, cold voice. Commander Ward, your species shows patterns of violence and unpredictability. We must control it. The words echoed through the chamber. Elias stood still, his face calm, but his eyes alive. He said softly, "You call it violence, we call it survival." A low wave of whispers filled the room. Some laughed, some hissed. To them, humans were children playing with fire. Then the great screen behind the council lit up. It showed a human colony under attack by a rebel alien fleet. Explosions flashed, smoke filled the skies, soldiers screamed for help. Elias turned toward the image, his expression changed. The calm in his eyes turned sharp, wild, ancient. It was like something hidden had suddenly opened inside him. Verex leaned forward, his crystal body glowing. "What is this expression?" he asked quietly. No one answered. On the screen, the humans stopped running. Their movements became fast, focused, and silent. They moved like hunters chasing prey. Every shot they fired hit with deadly accuracy. Every step was planned by instinct, not command. Alien officers watching the battle began to speak quickly. "This cannot be strategy," said one. "This is something deeper." Another whispered, "It looks like instinct." The heart rates of the human soldiers rose beyond safe limits. Their eyes turned cold, their breathing slowed. They looked less like soldiers and more like predators. The aliens attacking them began to fall one by one. Fear spread among the council. Elias watched the screen without blinking. The reflection of the battle fire burned in his eyes. He whispered a few words under his breath. They woke it up. Verex heard him and asked, "What has awakened, human?" Elias turned toward the council, his voice steady and calm. "Predator mode," he said. "It's what sleeps inside every human until the moment we must survive." The council fell silent again. Even the air felt heavy. For the first time, they saw humans not as fragile beings, but as something different. Something dangerous, beautiful, and unpredictable. One alien delegate whispered, This is why they survive impossible wars." Another said, "No wonder their planet breeds warriors." Elias looked around the room slowly. His voice carried without effort. "You study us like animals," he said, "but you have no idea what we are." On the screen, the last alien ship exploded. The human soldiers stood among the ruins, breathing slowly, eyes glowing with purpose. The transmission ended, leaving silence behind. Verex's glowing hands trembled slightly. He had seen 1,000 wars, but never this kind of will. Elias turned and started walking out of the hall. Before the doors closed, he said one last thing. "You wanted to understand humanity, now you have." The council members looked at one another, afraid to speak, because they had seen something that logic could not explain. It was not technology, not strength, not numbers. It was something older, something pure. The instinct to fight, to survive, to protect. The instinct that turned fear into power. And from that day forward, the story of that moment spread across the stars. They called it the silence before the storm, because that was the day the galaxy learned that humans are not prey. They are the storm that hunts back. The Galactic Council hall stayed silent long after Elias Ward had left. The great doors had closed, but his words echoed in every mind. "Predator mode." They repeated softly, as if afraid to speak it too loud. For the first time in their long history, the council felt something they rarely knew, fear. Verex of the Crystal Race sat frozen, his body glowing dimly. Around him, alien diplomats whispered in dozens of languages. Some wanted to ban humanity from the stars. Others said humanity must be studied, controlled, maybe even contained. But no one in that chamber dared to say what they all secretly thought, that maybe, just maybe, it was already too late. Deep inside the council archives, holorecords replayed the human battle again and again. Each replay showed something new. The way human eyes changed under pressure. The way they fought without commands. The way they moved together, silent and deadly, like a single living creature. The alien scientists could not explain it. No genetic code showed this reaction. No training could produce such unity. One researcher whispered, "It's not evolution. It's instinct older than stars." Meanwhile, across the stars, word spread fast. Every species began to talk about what the council had seen. Some laughed, calling it human drama. But others remembered ancient warnings from the first explorers who met humans. They said, never corner them. Because when humans are pushed to the edge, something awakens. And that something never stops until the threat is gone. On Earth, Commander Elias Ward stood before a silent room of human officers. They had all heard what happened. He said quietly, "They saw us for what we really are." A young lieutenant asked, "And what is that, sir?" Elias smiled faintly. "Adaptation with a pulse." The room stayed quiet. Every soldier there knew what he meant. Humanity did not seek war, but if war came, they would meet it without fear. Back in the Galactic Council, Verex called for an emergency session. He stood in front of the gathered leaders and said, "If this predator mode is real, we must understand it before it spreads." Another alien, a tall feathered being named Solon, hissed, "You cannot contain instinct, Verex, it lives in their blood." Verex's crystal fingers tapped nervously. "Then perhaps we must make peace before they remember who they truly are." Outside the chamber, rumors spread like fire. Some species began recalling their fleets from human borders. Others prepared secret weapons in fear of a future human uprising. The galaxy had seen power before, but not this kind. Not power born from emotion, from pain, from survival itself. It frightened them because it could not be predicted. You could measure a weapon's strength, but not a human's will. Days later, a secret message reached Verex's private console. It was from a distant research outpost studying human physiology. The message said only one line: "They evolve under pressure." Verex read it twice, his crystal eyes flickering dimly. He finally understood what made them dangerous. Every threat only made them stronger. Every loss made them sharper. And every time someone tried to break them, humanity learned how to rebuild faster than before. Across the stars, the Council began silent preparations. They called it containment protocol, but deep down it was fear. Fear that one day humans would remember this meeting and decide the galaxy no longer needed a council. Some members voted to cut contact. Others wanted to form an alliance. But no one could agree on a single thing, because no one knew what humanity would do next. Elias Ward, far away on Earth, looked at the night sky through the window of the command center. He knew what they were thinking. He whispered to himself, "They finally understand what we've been trying to hide." Behind him, a holographic map of the galaxy glowed softly. Hundreds of stars marked in red, the ones that had already started fearing human awakening. Elias smiled a quiet, knowing smile. "The silence before the storm," he said slowly, "is ending." And somewhere far beyond those stars, the universe trembled again, not because of war, but because it finally realized that the most dangerous weapon ever created was human instinct itself. Weeks had passed since the council meeting. Across the galaxy, the echo of that event refused to fade. Every world that heard about predator mode began to whisper about it. Some dismissed it as myth, but others could not stop thinking about what they had seen in those human eyes. The silent fire that burned without mercy. In a secret research facility orbiting the cold moon of Velis Prime, alien scientists gathered to uncover humanity's secret. The lab was filled with glowing tanks, screens, and floating bodies in suspension. Each one contained genetic samples collected from human battlefields. Dr. Zyrith, a reptilian geneticist, stared at one tank and said, "If we can understand it, we can control it." But his assistant, a smaller being with translucent skin, trembled. "Sir, this instinct, it is not something you can control. It awakens on its own," Zyrith hissed. "Then we will force it awake." They began experiments that no council law allowed. They injected fragments of human DNA into cloned alien soldiers. At first, nothing happened. But then, one of the test subjects opened its eyes. They were no longer alien. They were human, cold, focused, and full of silent rage. The creature broke free from its containment glass with one strike. Sirens echoed through the station. Guards fired energy rifles. But the creature moved faster than anything they had seen. It tore through walls and vanished into the dark corridors. When rescue ships arrived hours later, the station was silent. Only one message was left on the console, written in shaky alien letters. It woke up. Back on Earth, Commander Elias Ward received a secret transmission. It came from a human spy embedded within the council. He played the message alone in his dark office. "Elias, they're experimenting on us," the voice said. "They're trying to awaken our instinct in themselves." Elias's jaw tightened. He knew what that meant. The galaxy had learned fear, and fear always led to madness. He looked out the window at the distant stars. "They still don't understand," he whispered. "It's not something we control. It's something that controls us." Meanwhile, the escaped hybrid from Velis Prime reached an uninhabited planet. It wandered through forests and caves, confused but aware. It had memories that were not its own. Images of fire, war, and human emotion. The creature looked at its reflection in a stream and growled softly. "I survive," it muttered in a broken voice. Something ancient stirred inside it. It did not know it, but humanity's instinct had found a new home. When the council learned about the destruction of the research lab, panic spread. Verex stood before his advisors, his crystal skin dim from worry. "You played with something you cannot understand," he said. Dr. Zyrith, the only survivor, stood trembling. "It was supposed to be controlled," he said, "but it infected them. Their fear became hunger, their minds became wild." Verex turned away. "This is not just about humans anymore," he whispered. "This is evolution spreading across species." On Earth, Elias held an emergency meeting with world leaders. He explained the danger in simple words. "If they try to copy what makes us human, they'll unleash something they cannot stop." A general asked, "Then what do we do?" Elias looked straight at him. "We prepare," he said, "because the next time Predator mode awakens, it might not be ours." Far across the stars, the hybrid stood on a cliff, staring at the twin moons above. It felt hunger, not for food, but for challenge. Its heart beat like a human's, strong and restless. In that moment, it looked to the sky and whispered one word it had never been taught: Earth. And as the wind howled around it, the stars shimmered faintly. Something unseen rippled across space. A new instinct spreading like a spark from world to world. Uncontrolled, unstoppable, unknown. Because when the Council tried to understand humanity's secret, they did not realize that the awakening had already begun. Not in one species, but in all who dared to fear the dark. The Galactic Council believed they could fix their problem with force. After the Velis Prime disaster, fear turned into desperate action. They gathered their most elite hunters, mercenaries, and tracking fleets. Their goal was clear: find the escaped hybrid and erase every trace of the experiment. They called the operation Silent Cleansing, but deep down, they knew it was fear wearing armor. Verex stood before a wall of holograms showing the hunting fleets preparing. He wanted control, not chaos, but the galaxy was spinning out of his hands. He said softly, "We tried to understand humans, and now we are chasing their reflection." No one answered. Every council member wanted to believe the danger was still containable. But deep inside, they all knew something irreversible had started. The hybrid was no longer hiding. It moved from world to world, silent as a shadow. Wherever it went, strange things happened. Predators stopped hunting, prey fought back. Entire ecosystems became restless, as if the creature's presence awakened something inside all living things. On the planet North, the Council's hunters finally found traces of it. They surrounded an abandoned human outpost built decades ago. The commander of the hunting fleet, Captain Ryle, barked orders. "Contain it alive if possible, kill it if not." The soldiers entered the ruins carefully, but the air felt heavy, strange, like the ground itself was breathing. Inside the dark halls, they heard movement. One soldier whispered, "It's close." Then the lights flickered. Something moved past them faster than the eye could follow. Screams echoed, followed by silence. When the backup squad entered, all they found were empty helmets and claw marks on the walls. The creature had learned something new: patience. From the safety of his crystal chamber, Verex received the report. No survivors, no body, no trace. He closed his eyes. "This was not a beast," he said quietly. "This was a student." Because the hybrid had begun adapting just like the humans it came from. It studied its hunters, learned their tactics, copied their fear, and turned it into strength. On Earth, Commander Elias Ward read the same report through a secure channel. He knew it was only a matter of time before the Council came to blame humanity again. He called his team together. "They'll come for us," he said. "They always do when they don't understand." A scientist asked, "But what if that creature isn't against us?" Elias looked thoughtful. "If it has our instinct," he said, "then it doesn't choose sides, it chooses survival." Back in the council hall, panic meetings continued day and night. Some demanded total war against humans, others begged for peace. But unity was gone. Each species began to act on its own. Some fortified their planets, others fled into deep space. The galaxy that once ruled everything was now drowning in fear of one experiment. Verex finally made his choice. He activated Directive Null, a last resort protocol meant to erase all traces of human data from the archives. But when the order reached the main AI server, it refused. "Command rejected," said the cold mechanical voice. "Reason: humanity cannot be deleted." The lights flickered across the chamber. Every hologram on the wall began showing the same image. The hybrid, standing beneath twin moons, staring straight into the camera. Its eyes burned with faint red light. And behind that light was something even Verex recognized: intelligence. The hybrid spoke in a distorted but clear voice. "You tried to erase what you fear," it said, "but you only fed it." Then the screen went black. In that moment, the entire council realized the truth. The more they hunted it, the stronger it became. The more they feared it, the more it evolved. They had turned human instinct into a storm that no army could stop. Elias received the same signal moments later. He watched the hybrid's face appear across every military satellite. And in that instant, he understood what the council never could. Human instinct was not just inside humans anymore. It had spread. It had adapted. It had become a living force in the galaxy itself. He whispered softly. They called it Predator Mode. He looked out at the stars glowing faintly red. But now, it's evolution. And somewhere, far beyond the council's reach, the hybrid looked to the sky and smiled. Because the storm had begun, and the council's greatest mistake was thinking they could stop it. The galaxy had fallen into chaos. Worlds that once stood united under the Galactic Council now whispered in fear. No one trusted anyone. And above all, everyone feared humanity. The name Earth had become both a warning and a legend. On the blue planet itself, Commander Elias Ward stood before the United Earth Assembly. He looked tired, older, but his voice still carried strength. "The Council's fear has become a weapon," he said, "and soon that fear will reach our borders." Behind him, screens showed maps of space glowing red, enemy fleets moving closer. The Council had officially declared humanity a threat to galactic stability. Elias turned toward the crowd. "We did not start this," he said, "but we will finish it." His words echoed through the chamber like thunder. He wasn't calling for war. He was calling for awakening. He knew that hiding was no longer an option. Humanity had to evolve, not just to survive, but to take its place among the stars. In a secret facility under the Atlantic Ocean, scientists and soldiers worked side by side. They called the project Instinct Dawn. It was designed to study the mysterious energy that connected human emotion and survival. Elias visited the lab often, watching the tests with quiet focus. One scientist explained, "We're not creating weapons, sir. We're unlocking potential." Elias nodded slowly. That's what they feared, not our technology, but our potential. Far beyond Earth, the hybrid creature continued to roam. It had grown stronger, faster, smarter. Every world it visited changed subtly. Creatures became more aware, more alert. Predators and prey began to move with the same rhythm. It was as if the hybrid carried a piece of humanity's soul across the stars. The Council called it the spread. Verex watched reports showing planets falling into chaos. Creatures fighting with strange new coordination. Even Council soldiers began to show symptoms, flashes of rage, bursts of bravery. It terrified him. He realized humanity's instinct wasn't just spreading biologically. It was psychological, energetic, something deeper than science could name. On Earth, as the first alien fleet approached the solar system, Elias stood on the command deck of the battleship Horizon. He looked at the stars, his face calm. "They're coming," a young officer said, voice trembling. Elias smiled faintly. "Then it's time we remind them who we are." He gave the order for full planetary defense activation. All around the world, energy shields lit up, fleets rose from oceans and deserts. The quiet blue planet became a fortress. But Elias had one last card. A transmission code hidden since the council meeting. He activated it, and somewhere across the void, the hybrid heard the call. It stopped, lifted its head, and whispered, "Home." For the first time since its escape, it turned toward Earth. The stars bent faintly as it moved faster than light. It was no longer just a creature. It was a living symbol of everything humanity was: fear, courage, and will fused into one. Back at the council hall, Verex watched the approaching signal in disbelief. "It's heading to Earth," an officer shouted. Verex said quietly. "Then the storm returns to its source." Every fleet in the galaxy prepared for confrontation. But something strange began to happen. Their soldiers hesitated. Their hearts raced faster. They began to feel what humans felt: anticipation, adrenaline, instinct. It was spreading again, unstoppable, unbound. When the hybrid finally entered the solar system, it didn't attack. It simply floated near the moon, watching Earth's defense networks ignite. It felt something it had never felt before: belonging. Elias stood on the bridge, staring at the same spot. He didn't fear it. He whispered, "Welcome home." For a brief moment, human and hybrid shared the same heartbeat. And across the galaxy, something shifted. Every species watching from afar felt a pulse in the air. Not of war, but of awareness. The instinct that had been buried in humanity for ages had now risen beyond them. It was no longer a weapon. It was evolution waking up in every corner of the universe. And as the stars glowed brighter, the council realized their greatest mistake. They tried to destroy what they should have learned from. Because when humanity's instinct rose, it did not rise alone. It lifted everything that dared to feel alive. The galaxy would never be the same again. And in that silence between heartbeats, every being understood one truth. The storm was no longer coming. The storm had become life itself. The stars above Earth burned brighter than ever. For the first time in history, the entire galaxy's fleets pointed their weapons at one single planet. Millions of ships surrounded the solar system like a metallic storm, each one armed, trembling, and waiting for a command. And at the center of it all stood Earth, silent, glowing, alive. Commander Elias Ward stood on the command bridge of the horizon. Below him, the planet's lights shimmered through the dark clouds. Around him, his officers moved quickly, voices sharp with tension. But Elias remained calm. He whispered to himself, "So this is how the galaxy greets evolution." Far above the fleets, hidden in the shadows of the moon, the hybrid watched. It floated quietly, its body pulsing with faint red light. Inside its mind, a storm raged, human memories mixed with alien hunger. Voices echoed, fragments of both species whispering for control. It looked toward Earth, sensing something deep inside calling to it. It didn't know whether it was a weapon or a warning, but it knew one thing: this was where it belonged. Down below, humanity prepared. Every city went dark, every defense grid came online. Missile silos opened across continents, sky shields shimmered with blue light. But Elias had ordered something strange. "No first strike," he said, "we wait." His second-in-command frowned. "Sir, they're surrounding us." Elias nodded. "Let them. They still don't understand what they're dealing with." The Galactic Council's flagship, Eternal Dawn, led the armada. Inside, Verex stood before the central display. "Prepare to begin orbital suppression," he ordered. But before the ships could move, the hybrid appeared between them and Earth. Its body expanded, glowing like a star. Alarms rang across every vessel. Weapons locked on target. And for the first time, an entire fleet hesitated. Because when they looked into its eyes, they saw something they couldn't comprehend: recognition. The hybrid raised its hands. Energy rippled through space like thunder. The fleet's systems began to fail, engines shut down, weapons turned cold. Elias watched from the bridge, eyes wide. "It's not attacking," he said. "It's protecting us." Then the sky itself roared. A wave of invisible force rippled through the armada. Every pilot felt their hearts race, their breathing change. Some began to cry, some screamed, Others fell silent. They all felt it, the human instinct awakening inside them. Varex clutched his chest, his crystal body trembling. "This is impossible," he gasped. "It's spreading again." All across the fleets, soldiers dropped their weapons. They weren't afraid anymore. They were feeling what humanity had always felt in their darkest moments. Courage. The will to stand even when the universe said fall. On Earth, Elias understood. He turned to his officers and said, "It's showing them what we are." Outside, the hybrid's light grew brighter, forming a vast energy field around the planet. Every alien ship that entered the field began to lose control, not because of damage, but because their pilots stopped obeying fear. They were changing. Varex watched as his fleet refused his orders. They no longer wanted to fight. They wanted to understand. He shouted, "We came to stop them, not become them." But his words were lost in the storm of awakening spreading through his own army. Elias stood quietly, his face glowing in the reflection of the hybrid's light. He whispered, "It's not war, it's revelation." In that moment, he realized what the hybrid truly was. It wasn't a monster. It wasn't an accident. It was evolution's messenger, the living bridge between instinct and intelligence. The storm over Earth raged with light and silence. No weapons fired, no ships fell. Instead, every being who felt the wave of energy saw visions. Ancient memories of survival, unity, and hope. The instinct that had once belonged to one small species now connected them all. When the light finally faded, the galaxy's largest fleet drifted quietly in orbit. No one fired a shot. No one gave an order. Because every heart, human and alien, now beat with the same rhythm. Varex looked out at the glowing blue world below and said softly, "We came to destroy monsters." He paused. "But we found mirrors." And as the hybrid descended slowly toward Earth, Elias closed his eyes. The storm had passed, but what it left behind was far greater than victory. It was understanding. It was unity. It was the rise of something new. Human instinct had not destroyed the galaxy. It had woken it up. When the light faded, silence covered the stars. The war that was supposed to destroy humanity had ended without a single weapon fired. The fleets that once pointed their guns at Earth now drifted quietly like lost shadows. Every pilot, every commander, every soldier stared at the blue planet with new eyes. They no longer saw prey. They saw origin. Elias Ward stood on the command deck of the Horizon. His eyes watched the sunrise over Earth's horizon through the glass. The planet glowed like a living jewel. He whispered softly, "It's over." But deep down, he knew it wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. The hybrid descended through the atmosphere, glowing brighter than the sun. It landed on the plains of the old United Nations site. Its body changed as it touched the ground. The alien features softened, human traits returned. And standing before the stunned scientists and soldiers was something neither human nor alien, but both. It looked at Elias and spoke for the first time with a calm, clear voice. "The instinct has awakened," it said, "and it belongs to all." Varex, leader of the council, came to Earth under a flag of peace. He was no longer shining with arrogance, but dimmed by humility. He bowed slightly before Elias. "For centuries, we believed strength came from logic," he said. "But today we learned it comes from fear, love, and survival together." Elias nodded slowly. "That's what makes us human," he replied. "And now, maybe, what makes us all." The following weeks changed the galaxy forever. Humans worked beside alien scientists, rebuilding destroyed outposts. New alliances formed, not from treaties or laws, but from shared understanding. The council was dissolved and replaced by something new. A circle of species united by instinct, empathy, and purpose. They called it the Concord of Life. Its first capital was not on the richest world, but on Earth itself. The hybrid became a symbol. Some called it a savior, others called it the bridge. It traveled between worlds, teaching them what it had learned, that instinct is not a curse, but a guide. Under its influence, wars slowly vanished from the stars. Not because fear was gone, but because every being now understood what fear truly meant. It was not weakness. It was the first spark of strength. On Earth, cities were rebuilt with alien technology and human creativity. Skies filled with ships carrying both species side by side. Children of different worlds played together in schools that once taught separation. Human music echoed through alien halls, and alien light art danced in human streets. The galaxy had finally found harmony, not through control, but through chaos transformed into unity. Years later, Elias walked through the Hall of Concord. At its center stood a monument, a tall figure of the hybrid holding a single burning flame. The plaque below read, "From instinct, we rose." He placed his hand on the stone and smiled quietly. "We thought predator mode was our curse," he said softly, "but it was our teacher." Varric stood beside him, older, wiser. He looked at the same statue and said, "Do you think peace will last?" Elias answered, "Peace isn't meant to last, but understanding does." They both watched as the twin suns rose above the horizon. Their light touched the faces of humans and aliens working together across the new capital. Far above, the stars shimmered again, not with fear or war, but with life. Every signal, every heartbeat across the galaxy pulsed in the same rhythm. It was no longer just humanity's instinct. It was universal. The galaxy had evolved. The storm that once threatened to destroy everything had instead reborn it. As the hybrid looked down from orbit, its glowing eyes reflected both Earth and the stars. It whispered, "Balance restored." Then it turned and vanished into the cosmic sea, leaving behind a universe forever changed. Because on that day, the galaxy learned its final lesson, that humanity's greatest power was never domination or destruction. It was the ability to awaken the sleeping courage in others. And from that awakening came a new dawn. A dawn that would echo through eternity. The dawn of the new galaxy.